Hey guys, it's Bree from Acuttersguardianangel, and I first wanted to start off by saying how grateful I am for all of you guys. 4,000 followers. Wow. I never expected that we would reach something so big, so powerful, and it means so much to me that we have. So like Taylor addressed in our last video, you guys have been asking a lot of questions about how did we start off? And I was the first one on Acuttersguardianangel, and so I figured I'd give you a little backstory. And that backstory starts in 2010. 2010 and 2011, I was in 7th grade. And that winter was really hard for me. I had reached a point in my life where things weren't going the way I wanted them to. I felt like everything was falling apart. I remember being sad every day and not knowing why. I wanted to find an answer. I wanted to find a way out of it, but nothing felt right. I just felt stuck in a place where I wasn't happy, and it felt like it was going to be that way forever. I never dealt with anything like depression before. I never knew anyone who was depressed. I never had to deal with that. And so I didn't know what was going on with me. And I held it in and made it through to the summer. And things seemed to be going okay. I wasn't really sad anymore. But I became really anxious. I'd been going to a summer camp for a few years, and I went to this camp again, a week-long camp. I knew people there. It was going to be fun. I was really excited to go. And I got there, and within 30 minutes, I was calling my mom, begging her to take me home. I was terrified to leave the room, and I spent all of my time sobbing in the dorm room I was staying in. It was less than 24 hours before I made my mom come get me, and I had to come home. At this point, we decided we would go see a psychiatrist. I had been talking to people before, a therapist, but it never seemed to really help me. I saw the psychiatrist, did an evaluation, and they told me that I had depression and anxiety, and that was news to me, but they put me on some medication, and it helped for a little bit. And I got to the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, and that winter I was overwhelmed with anxiety and depression, and I was drowning in it. I didn't know what to do. I had my first panic attack at school one day, and so in my mind I associated school with panic attacks and promised myself that I would never go back. My parents had to force me to go to school for days, and eventually they couldn't do it anymore. They couldn't deal with me crying and begging them just to please not make me go. So I entered an outpatient program, and I went through a lot of group therapy and a lot of individual therapy, and got my meds switched and up the dosage and switched again, and they thought they got it right for a few weeks until it came back. But they wouldn't let me back in the hospital. They wouldn't take me to the outpatient again. They told me I couldn't miss any more school, and I was left trying to make my way through. I tried to stay home. I was home for a few weeks before the school called me in for a meeting and told me that if I wasn't going to school, they were going to call the police and they would take me to school and arrest my parents. And, sorry. The fear of having something happen to my family was greater than the fear of school, and I ended up forcing myself to go for the rest of the year, just a few weeks. And things felt better again. In the summer, things felt pretty good. I met my boyfriend, we started dating, and everything was working out. September 2012, I started feeling awful again, but it was even more so than before. I was overwhelmed with guilt all the time for things that I didn't do. I was sad for no reason. I was angry at myself. I felt like I was being followed by a dark cloud. Every day I thought about trying to leave, trying to feel better, and wanting to escape. And that led me to September 10th, and I woke up that day, and the thought that had been in the back of my mind, the thought that had been there for weeks, had decided to come to the forefront. And I woke up that Tuesday thinking, today's a good day to die. And I wrote my suicide note. And I planned on killing myself that night. After school I got home, I went through the day, and I was happier than I had been in quite a while. Because I was going to end it that night, and it would be over. That night I got home from school, and I had an appointment with my therapist, and my mom brought me there, and I made it through 45 minutes, acting like everything was perfectly fine. And I felt like everything was perfectly fine, because it would be that night. And that was up until probably the last 10 minutes, when my mom came in and we got in an argument. And I finally screamed at her, "You don't know how many times I think of ending it all." And that made the therapist think, and my mom think, and it led to quite a longer appointment than planned, where I ended up getting put back in outpatient. And that was okay. For a few days I was in there, and September 14th I self-injured for the first time. And I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was just a few scratches. I could stop when I wanted. September 15th I self-injured again. The 16th, the 17th. I had seen so many people. In the times I had been in this outpatient program, I'd seen so many people who were caught in this trap of self-injury and couldn't get out. I promised myself I wouldn't be one of those people. But I was watching myself turn into one of them. I didn't want to be caught in that, and after going back to the outpatient, they found out that I had been self-injuring, and the 17th I got put in a mental hospital. I was there for a week, and when I left, everything felt great. You know, I'm gonna go out there, it's gonna be fun, you know, I know how to deal with myself, I know how to be confident, I can do this. I was released the 23rd, and the 26th I was checked back in. because I came home and the first thing I did was self-injure. That night, the night of the 23rd, I remember laying on my bed and I thought, why am I not happy? I felt happy the night before. I felt happy in the hospital. I felt like everything was going to be great and I was miraculously cured. And I thought to myself, if I can't be happy anywhere but in an asylum, then I can't be happy anywhere. And I sat with a bottle of narcotics in my hand, and slowly I talked to my friends, and I told every one of them, okay, good night, I'm going to bed. And they said, okay, good night, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said good night, but I meant goodbye. I decided I needed to tie up one loose end before I did everything, and I texted my boyfriend saying, I'm sorry, I can't date you anymore. I decided it would be a cleaner break. If he wasn't my boyfriend and I killed myself, it would hurt him less. It made sense in my mind at the time, but looking back, it doesn't make sense at all. So I was back in the hospital. I tried to break up with him, and he sat there for an hour and a half, telling me repeatedly, no, you're not breaking up with me. No, you're not. No, just stop and think about it. And I eventually I was too tired to do anything, and I went to bed. For real, I went to bed. So yeah, that's what ended me up back in the hospital on the 26th. I was in there for 5 days, and again, they let me out, and everything was going to be great. This was going to be, everything was cured magically. No problems anymore. It's going to be perfect. But I didn't stop self-injuring. I was caught on the track that I'd seen other people go down before, and to tell you the truth, I didn't want to stop self-injuring. I didn't feel like I was hurting anyone, except for myself. I continued going to therapy and self-injuring, and things just kept getting worse. I got in a whole bunch of fights with my parents that ended me up in the ER when they found my self-injury, and one time I tried to jump out a window. Tried to drink floor cleaner, but I ended up throwing it up before anything could happen. That's what got me back in the hospital, end of October. And I was there for another week, through Halloween. Again, things felt great, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna stop self-injuring, it's gonna be great. And I got out and I didn't. And I got out and I was like, I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna have no problems with school. And I was out for 4 days. And those 4 days I refused to go to school because I was afraid. I was terrified of what might happen there. And so on the 21st, the 6th, I ended myself back up in another hospital. This time the hospital was different. Different people, a different whole new place. And I was in there for 3 weeks. They let me out just in time for my birthday, and I still had to keep going back for daytime programs. And when I left, I promised them, yeah, I'm not going to self-injure. And I had absolutely no intent on keeping that promise. I left, I bullshitted my way out. I didn't want to stop. I didn't think I needed to. And I remember one night, it was like right after I got home from the hospital. My parents had locked up all the knives, they locked up all the razors, and I was desperately running around the house trying to find something to hurt myself with. My parents and my sister were gone, and I wanted it. I was texting my boyfriend at the time, and I stopped texting him as soon as my parents left, and I started running around the house like crazy trying to find something that could puncture my skin. And of course he noticed something was wrong. And he called me. And he called me. And he called me. And I finally answered while I was sitting there trying to hammer a paper cutter open, and he sat there and begged me. He pleaded with me, please stop, please don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And all I could say was, I need to cut. And through the sobs, those were the only words I could get out. I love you, but I need to cut. And his words got through to me. A few words did when no other words could. And I remember him saying, you don't need to cut. You want to cut. And when you realize that you don't need, that it's not a need, it's a want, that's when you break free of it. You can't stop until you realize that you don't need it. And that hit really hard. And it turned my mind. It made me realize I'm doing this to myself. I looked at the lines on my arm, both my legs, and I realized this isn't where I want to be. This is everything that I hoped I wouldn't be. And this is what I've become. And I put down the blade. And I didn't hurt myself. And that was the first time that I stopped myself. I went on and continued to grow over the next 2 months. I learned how to deal with my emotions. I learned how to deal with myself. And I cut for the last time on January 5th. So you're probably wondering how all this has to do with Acutter's guardian angel and not with Bree. All through the year 2012, when I was having a lot of my problems, I created an Instagram account that, like a lot of people have, is a venting account, a secret account where I posted depressing quotes and pictures of my self-injury and looked at other people's depressing quotes and pictures of their self-injury. And after that night in November, I stopped going on my account. Well, January 22nd comes along, and I log back into that account, and I look through the old pictures and realize how far I've come. And from looking at the posts on my feed, I realized how sad other people were, how I was that sad, and how after finding happiness, I didn't want anyone to be that sad. And so I went through and deleted almost every single post on my account. And I unfollowed everyone that I was following, and I started fresh. I changed the name of the account to Acuttersguardianangel. And I posted a picture about how recovery is possible. And slowly our account grew. Austin joined, and of course I trusted him. And when Taylor messaged me, we only had about 200 followers, which I am still so grateful for. That's a lot of followers still. My mind is blown at the 4,000 we have today. She messaged me and asked if there was anything she could do to help, and something told me that I could trust her. And it's been like 6 months since she messaged me, 6 or 8 months, and we're here. Later, as she told you in her video, she came to me in Austin and said, "Hey, I have this friend," and Sinclair was part of our group, and you guys have become our family, and we've become each other's family. And we're not perfect. We're far from perfect. But you guys make me feel a little more whole every day, a little more complete. And I've gone through rough patches since my recovery. Everyone does. But looking back today to where I was a year ago, I think I have something to be proud of. And I hope that a lot of you guys can say that in a few months, in a year. I hope that you can look back and say, look how far I've come. And that's what I want to help with in Acuttersguardianangel. So thanks, guys, and look on Instagram for more updates. Love you. Stay strong.